Doug Hoyle. Number 1, sir.
Mr. Speaker, sir, this morning I presided at a meeting of the Cabinet and had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall be having further meetings later today. This evening I shall be speaking at the Anglo-German Königswinter Conference dinner held in Cambridge.
Mr. Hoyle.
But will the Prime Minister take time off from her engagements to investigate why the outpatient vital service in Cheshire has not been raised from the skeleton level to which it was reduced during the ambulance dispute? And isn't it wrong that our government is cost-cutting at the expense of the sick, the infirm, the disabled, and instead of the Prime Minister giving me a usual outmoded and outdated statistics on the health service, will she take steps immediately to bring this inhuman treatment of patients to an end?
Mr. Speaker, I will refer the detailed matter to my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State, but I do not give the honourable member outdated statistics. This year, as far as contemporary statistics are concerned, the taxpayer has contributed an extra £2.4 billion to the National Health Service, and next year the taxpayer will be contributing a further £3 billion to the National Health Service. So while it was £7.5 billion in all in a year, when I came into number 10 Downing Street, it will now be £29 billion a year, which the taxpayer contributes to the health service.
Mr. Timothy Kirkhope.
The 2, sir.
I refer my honourable friend to the reply which I gave some moments ago.
Mr. Kirkhope.
When my right honourable friend sees Chancellor Kohl tomorrow, will she explain to him that the British people understand Germany's desire for unification, but they want to be sure that this will strengthen Europe's security and stability, and that this will mean the membership of the united Germany in NATO and the presence of British and American forces with nuclear weapons on German soil?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend is quite right, and I'm sure he'll be listened to particularly carefully because I understand he was one of the parliamentary observers at the recent East German elections. I agree with him entirely. Chancellor Kohl has been very firm in his support of NATO and of a united Germany being in NATO. He's also been very firm in his support for American troops staying on German soil and also for nuclear weapons being stationed on German soil. Both are vital for the future defence of freedom.
Mr. Neil Kinnock.
Mr. Speaker, if the Prime Minister had her time again, would she still introduce the poll tax?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very grateful for that reply. Could she... Oh, it's all right.
Order. Mr. Neil Kinnock.
Could the Prime Minister tell us whether she thinks if they had their time again, her honourable friends would vote for the poll tax?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, infinitely.
Order. Prime Minister.
Infinitely preferable to a rating revaluation, which would put a colossal burden on half of the people who reside in local authority areas, a colossal burden, and infinitely preferable to Labour's roof tax and local income.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister must be just about the last person in the country who believes all that claptrap. What the people of Britain know is that from Sunday, they will have imposed upon them a tax of monstrous injustice and cost, and it will have been imposed by her government. It is incompatible with democracy.
I I notice the right honourable gentleman wisely keeps silent about his own policy of a roof tax plus a local income tax. Of course he does, because the moment the right honourable gentleman enunciates a policy, it's blown sky high.
Mr. Ashby.
Your friend will know that the whole House will be is deeply concerned about the discovery that nuclear triggers have been discovered destined for Iraq, about which there's a statement later on. There has been a steady flow of defense equipment and technology to Iraq over the years. Would my right honourable friend get together with our common market friend, our European friends, as a matter of urgency, and institute a meeting to try and stop the flow of this technology and this equipment to Iraq and to preserve the peace in the Middle East?
Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend is right. The attempted spread of nuclear weapons is very, very serious indeed, and Customs ought to be congratulated on having foiled an effort to spread them further. My right honourable friend will be making a full statement. In the meantime, will be answering a private notice question, during the course of which he will make a full statement. And in the meantime, we shall be urgently contacting the signatories of the Non-Proliferation Treaty and also those who signed the Missile Technology Control Regime to see what we can do to see that there is no repeat of this very, very serious incident.
Mr. Kevin Barron.
The honourable gentleman to the reply which I gave some moments ago.
Barron.
Does the Prime Minister think that it's right that over 42,000 student nurses in Britain who are on low incomes have to pay the full rate of poll tax?
Mr. Speaker, before long, most student nurses, that is, all of those who are not yet registered as full nurses, will be on Project 2000. That means that they will be paid a bursary and will be treated fully as ordinary students and therefore will pay only the 20% of the community charge. Before long, most of them, most of them will be on that particular system. In the meantime, there are some nurses, some student nurses, who are in receipt of a salary, and they will be treated as all other trainees who are in receipt of a salary. If the salary were to be very low, they would be available for rebates, but most of them will in fact be paying the community charge in full. That was taken into account in the recent pay award and the speed at which it was implemented.
Sir John Stokes. Number 4, sir.
I refer my honourable friend to the reply which I gave some moments ago.
John Stokes.
Is my right honourable friend aware that there is considerable concern about the teaching of English history in our schools today? Instead of teaching what are vaguely called themes, why can we not go back to the good old days when we learned dates by heart and learned the names of the kings and queens of England and of our great statesmen and warriors and of our battles and the glorious deeds of our past?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Order.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Order. I'm sure the whole House wants to hear a reply.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. As usual, my honourable friend is absolutely right. This is the subject of a very, very vigorous debate as to what children should be taught in history. I agree with him. Most of us are expected to learn from experience of history, and we can't do that unless we know it. They should know the great landmarks of British history and should be taught them at school. I agree totally with my honourable friend.
John Hume.
Would the Prime Minister recall with me that 16 years ago, 21 working-class people were having a quiet drink in public houses in Birmingham when they were blown to pieces by the IRA. And would you agree with me that there is no greater injustice than atrocities of that nature, because those injustices cannot be changed and those people cannot come out of their graves? Would you further agree with me that the wave of anger and emotion that swept Britain following that atrocity was both natural and understandable? And would you further agree with me that it is not understandable that that wave of anger and emotion should distort the court process and lead to the conviction of the wrong people? And given the overwhelming evidence that is now emerging, and the deep concern being expressed by respected national figures in this country and abroad, would she personally now order an independent inquiry into the whole affair?
Mr. Speaker, I think most of us recall the scenes of what happened then, that terrorist act and the great tragedy which lives with some families forever. But I think I must also say to the honourable gentleman that we don't either do trial by television, and that the place to put any new evidence is with the police. And my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, said if there is any fresh evidence, of course, in the meantime, it will be looked at very carefully indeed. And he knows the things which are underway with the Chief Constable of the West Midlands and also Devon and Cornwall to inquire into any latest evidence. Then it is a matter for the prosecuting authorities or for my right honourable friend to decide whether any further action should be taken, bearing in mind that there has already been one rehearing by the Court of Appeal which gave a very, very detailed judgment. The honourable gentleman referred to emotions. I think we must not let our emotions run away with us either. This is a matter of evidence before courts and not of feelings.
Mrs. Maureen Hicks.
Number 5, sir.
Honourable friend, the reply which I gave some moments ago.
Friend not agree that the need for her trade union electoral reforms was never more obvious than in the recent weeks with the dubious election practices of the Transport and General Workers Union, the union which sponsors the leader of the opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure that all our measures on trade union reform were very well judged and have been of very, very great benefit to ordinary members of trade unions. I hope that one day the Transport and General Workers Union will take a move to the right. It will be very welcome.
Mr. Christopher Mullin. Chris Mullin.
Is the Prime Minister aware that this morning her press secretary has been quietly briefing the press that no new developments have occurred in the last few days in the Birmingham pub bombings case? And wouldn't the appropriate course of action be for the Home Secretary to come to the House and say that out loud so that honourable members can ask, so that honourable members listen, so that honourable members can ask the many questions that arise?
No, Mr. Speaker, a television programme alters nothing. We do not have trial by television, and the day we do, the rule of law will have left this country for good. The only thing that matters in a court of law is evidence. The only thing that matters in reopening a case is whether there is any fresh evidence. I'm not aware yet that there is, but if there is, that matter will be fully taken into account by my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary.
Sir Anthony Beaumont Dark.
Number 6.
I refer my honourable friend to the reply which I gave some moments ago.
Beaumont Dark.
Would my right honourable friend accept that she has many friends and admirers in this House, not least myself?
Order. Mr. Beaumont Dark.
Would she also accept that there was a need to change the system of local government finance in this country? But the fact of the matter is that the poll tax has become friendless, even amongst those who gain most, because they do not recognise it as fair based upon people's abilities to pay. Can we this day set ourselves upon a path where ability to pay plays a bigger part than just where you happen to live, fortunately or unfortunately.
Mr. Speaker, first, ability to pay is taken care of by the most generous community charge rebates this country has ever known. And every penny of those rebates is taken care of by the taxpayer. Secondly, the majority of local expenditure of local authorities is met not by the community charge payer, but by the taxpayer, and the taxpayer is based on a progressive system of tax, under which, of course, the rich pay far more than the poor. Those are two facts. I can think of nothing more unfair than a system of rating, nothing more unfair than a system of rating which ensured that half the people who voted for local authorities did not pay a penny piece in local...
Private notice question, Mr. Gerald Cow.